started this job, we were given the calendar for the term. We have calendars printed for, 2020, 2021, it was all mapped out. This is going to reverse that. That's just going to be tossed now if this went through.
There a question in there, Councillor, somewhere? Yeah.
Is that going to be tossed? That was already decided and printed. We're revising everything from this point on if this is approved in January.
Ms.
And my
Medeiros?
question to you, through you to the clerk.
Through the chair, we would just do new calendars for 2020, 2021, 2022. Through the chair, if I may, this was one of the options when we first put forward the calendar before the last council, this 4-week rotation. So we do have them ready.
Okay, so now it was tossed out, I think a couple of times, about containing costs. How much would we save? I mean, the question through you, Chair Marks, to staff, when we have evening meetings, the staff that are in attendance are all, we're not paying overtime or extra, are we? The positions that are represented by staff at council.
Through the chair, for some positions we are paying overtime.
And so what savings are you talking? I mean, it's been tossed out there that we're going to be containing costs.
Are there any savings that the commissioner is aware of?
Through the chair, potentially there are some savings. We can't quantify them because it depends on the staff that are in attendance at the meetings, what reports are on the agenda, how lengthy the meetings go. There's a lot of variables that we would need to consider.
Yeah, just to clarify, nothing's been done formally because this is a referral from council. This didn't come directly from staff, so you'd need some time to investigate that if that was the case.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and on that point, Chair Marks, this is a referral from council. It's not gone to staff for a report. That happens, I think, quite regularly now, that there's the opportunity there to have a more fulsome discussion. I mean, this is interesting. We are deliberating it to a point here this morning, but like finding out things like that. I mean, because I've looked around at council chamber and wondered, why are all the staff here sitting through this when really it's only going to be one department? But the other point is we have, as Councillor Marin Pietri said, we have to have public planning meetings in the evening. We're not going to change that. Doesn't that tell you something? I mean, there's no plan to change any public meeting about a telecommunications tower or a plan of subdivision. Because why? Because that's when the public come. And truly, if you want a group of people to come, it takes time to go through delegations, whether it's an issue on a public planning meeting, a telecommunications tower, or something that's on the agenda for a council meeting. Yes, it can be messy. We knew that when we ran for the position, and it's so not comparable to a business job, lawyer's job or any other, because people have regular set hours. In my previous career, there were erratic hours, and I kind of consider this job very similar, a people business where you want to engage people, find out and try to get improvements. It's not business hours that we run, it's people hours, like a people business. And I guess I'm finished again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Just be cognizant, sir, of Rule 25.2 that 5 minutes for the speakers that are going to continue to speak to the motion.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Just to understand, I guess I have to direct, I think I have to direct this to the city manager. So I'm giving him a heads up that it's coming his way. Is there a direction from yourself or your predecessors as to which staff members are required to attend at council meetings?
Mr. Ralph, good afternoon.
Thank you, Chair Marks. It really depends, to Councillor Nicholson, it really depends on the report that's being brought forward and up to the commissioner to decide who they bring to the particular meeting to be able to answer any questions that may arise from the debate.
Okay. Is it a requirement that the commissioners be present?
Through you, Chair Marks, for council meetings?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would expect that. They'd love me to say no, but the answer is I expect them to be here, yes.
Of course, and the same would apply to the statute officers, treasurer, legal staff, et cetera?
Through you, Chair Marks, not all statutory officers, for example, the fire chief or the chief building official may not be required to be here, but certainly commissioners and the clerk would need to be here.
And would the legal staff have to have a representative present?
Through you, Chair, as a member of CLT, yes.
All right. The reason I raised those questions to members of council is the argument's been made that somehow we're aiding staff with this decision. What we're doing is once every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on what we decide, we're going to wipe out from all our senior staff in CLT a complete workday. You know, rather than them working during the day, dealing with their business, our lawyers dealing with courts, our commissioners are going to be sitting in this chambers all day. And then they're going to have to go back to their offices after the council meeting and hopefully try and catch up. So the argument about overtime, the argument about stress on our staff, it's a hard argument to make if staff are sitting in the council chambers on a Monday. So I think it's a trade-off. I think it's whether they come in the evening after their workday or they come in the morning and attend council, then have to work later to catch up. I think we've got to just recognize that it's not the panacea in that particular scenario that we think it is. I remember a case, and I just want to try and deal with the one item, and I want to address one procedural matter. Did this council adopt by resolution the schedule of council meetings at the beginning of the term of this council?
Turning to staff, I wonder if anyone has any recollection. Otherwise, we can. Ms. Medeiros?
Through the chair, it was with the previous council.
Was the previous? We were just talking about it. We weren't sure who actually moved the motion. Because if this council done it, we may have to have a vote to reconsider it. So we don't have to reconsider because it was the previous council that said it, and we chose not to amend it during the first year. Is that correct? All right. And my last question, just on the procedural matter, just again to deal with, I don't want false perceptions to be left out. If council approves, if the standing committee recommends to council this motion and it's approved by council, the notice that goes to the public is simply to notify the public of council's action and their intent to pass a confirming bylaw on that change. Is that correct?
Ms. Medeiros?
Through the chair, the notice would provide for members of the public to provide input into whether or not council should amend their procedure bylaw accordingly.
All right. Now, I want to be clear on this point. If it passes council and that notice goes out to the public and the public offers their feedback, is it a simple majority of council at the subsequent meeting to deal with this change, or is it a 2/3 required if council did not want to pursue the issue after the public input?
It would be a reconsideration of a council decision, but passing of the bylaw would be, if council does not wish to pass the bylaw, then it would vote against passing the bylaw.
So if we passed a motion, it went to the public, through notice, public offered their comments, and council wishes to amend or change the recommendation, council would have to secure 8 votes of council to do that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it would be to reconsider anything that's in the bylaw, in the motion.
Yes.
But if, once the bylaw is in front of council, council votes yes or no on the bylaw.
So we couldn't amend it, we could only kill it by majority vote.
That is correct.
Right. And the reason I asked that question again is specifically to deal with the issue that everyone says, we hear from the public between now and the pass of the bylaw, we can always change it. But the onus changes. Right now, it's a simple majority. 6 out of 11 votes, or if people are missing, maybe a lower number even, is required to make the change. But if we make the change prior to going to the public, now it's 2/3. Unless you want to kill the whole process and go back to square one. And I guess what I'm saying here is that doesn't strike me as being the best course of action. And again, put to you, why would we not want to, if you have to do it, pass it to the committee. And then before it goes to council for a final ratification vote, change the procedural process to allow the public to have their comment at that point in the process before council votes up or down on the process. At least then you have a chance for the public to have its say prior to the final decision, and you have a simple majority vote as it stands today. If you follow the current process, or members of council who could be hardwired to their position could end up overruling 7 other members of council who don't want to support that position. And that's hardly democracy. We've had that happen a couple of times in this term already on old procedural bylaws and old procedural issues. I draw your attention to when we asked the representatives of the fire union to speak. Vast majority of council wanted to hear. 4 members didn't. They weren't heard. So again, if you believe in your position, I simply ask you to consider the process that it adopted in principle at committee. I think I can read the votes here. But before you go and pass it to council, allow the notice to be put.
Thank you. Councilor Kerr, and then maybe I'll have a comment and we'll commence the voting.
Thank you. Just one comment, just a short comment. There was a comment prior in the discussion that said a particular council that only had 1 phone call. And that perhaps was an indication of how important this is to the public. Well, I have had no phone calls. However, on Facebook, I have seen dozens of people who are against this move. So, in so much as the public's opinion counts towards what decisions are made, then I think it behooves us to hear more formally from the public. It does change the way they can access their local government, and I think it's important enough that we hear that before we render any decision. I would like to hear that. If there's a process to be able to do that, then I would be in favor of it. Thank you.